Hello everyone and welcome back to another Movie Nights movie review. Today we are talking about Warfare. This film is directed by Alex Garland and Ray Mendoza. It's also written by the two of them. And this is based on a true story during a combat mission in the Iraq War that the real Ray Mendoza was in. And it's based on the event that he went through. And before we dive any further, as always, it is me, Dalton Burdett, with the amazing Nick Iricchio. Nick, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing good, buddy.
Good. I was waiting for some sort of like war pun, and it never
I
came.
was trying to think of one for war, but I was sort of internalizing the whole do I want to make a joke?
Is this appropriate?
Yeah.
Fair. That's completely
Feeling very propagandist today.
Oh man,
Propagandist a word?
that's completely fair. That's fair. So, guys, there's a lot to talk about with this movie. One, for those unfamiliar, Alex Garland, who's one of the co-directors, is the director of films such as Civil War, Annihilation. I believe he also directed Ex Machina. Really great filmmaker. And Ray Mendoza, who has worked a ton in the film industry, mostly with stunts and other things. The co-director, like I mentioned at the top of the video, he was actually in the story that this is based on, and you actually get to meet his character, Ray, in the movie. But with all that down, let's kind of dive into the movie itself. This movie, in the group that we saw it with, if you've watched the channel for any number of years, you know that Nick and I have an AMC A-list of 11 people. It's a lot of people. And I like that because you get a lot of different opinions, different conversations coming out of a movie. Sometimes we're all in sync. Sometimes we're complete disarray of how we feel. And this movie was an interesting one to experience with everybody because most everyone liked how the film was made, but not everyone liked the film itself. Personally, I really liked the film. I thought the film was quite good. I'd probably give it like a 3.5 out of 5 stars, maybe 4 on a good day. And that's mostly due to a few things. One of them, I'm going to make a comparison to another movie, and that is Dunkirk. Now, obviously, this film's only made on a budget of $20 million. It doesn't have the scale of like a Dunkirk. The reason why I make the comparison is because this movie is about an event, and it starts and ends with that event, and you feel like you are in this event. Unlike Dunkirk, this story is told linearly in real time, not through 3 different perspectives across different points of time, like Christopher Nolan would do. But this movie, the way it uses suspense, the visceralness of it cannot be understated. You feel like you are in this room with them, and it is nail-biting shit. Personally, I enjoyed all of the performances in the movie. And the movie has a pretty good cast. It has people like Will Poulter, like Joseph Quinn, Charles Melton, and countless others. I enjoyed every performance in the film. I also think that the direction was solid from both Mendoza and Garland. The film looked great as well. It pretty much takes place in one location in this building, and it does a good job of kind of setting the scene for you of what the film does. The film also does have some subtle commentary about, the war, that war overseas, and how necessary it really was. And again, it's very subtle. It does not hit you in the face with anything. It just kind of shows this event play out and just kind of shows like what was the point in doing all of this. And I also think that the movie's biggest thing that it achieves of just kind of showing this one event in this one point in time is both its biggest asset and its biggest detriment. And what I mean by that is there are times in the movie where what you're watching gets, has your attention, it grips you, it holds on to you, it's like almost shaking you, and then that can only be maintained for so long before that itself starts to feel a little bit stale. And to me, it never quite gets to the point of it felt fully stale and it lost me completely, because it would, at some point in the story, kick back up again. But I was worried that it would get stale on me. And, because even when you're basing something on a true story like this, on a true event, like you have to have some sort of narrative structure for your audience. And I thought for the most part that worked out, but there were some things that felt like a stretch to get there. I mostly like the communication because there's 2 separate teams in the movie. And, when one team kind of comes to help the other, from that point on, like the movie was good up to that point, but from that point on, it was like awesome. Like Charles Melton comes into this movie and just kind of commands the screen. And something I want to comment on before I throw it over to you, Nick, is the beginning of the movie actually did a really great job of showing how mundane it can actually be whenever you're not obviously in like active fucking combat. There's a section of the movie that I think a lot of people might criticize of just a lot of them sitting around, not, looks like they're not doing anything, but they're just kind of going through the checks and motions. And there's one guy who's looking through a sniper scope for what seems like 20 minutes. And it's just like, man, eventually like he switches with somebody. It's like, I need you to take a break. But like, I'm thinking about that because normally like you think about the big action stuff. You're like, oh my gosh, like how could a human being do that? Just from looking at the scope for 20 minutes, I'm like, I don't know if I could do that. Like that itself just seems like so mundane and so, still. But the movie showing that I thought was really interesting. But Nick, I'm going to throw it over to you. What were your likes? What were your dislikes? And, I'm looking forward to kind of discussing it with you.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I gave it about 3.5 stars. It wasn't a movie that had a lot of commentary on, that war in general. It
Mm-hmm.
was just showing like these are the people here. I mean, you don't even really know necessarily what their mission even is.
Mm-hmm.
Probably a recon or something. But just the idea of like, and you're sort of watching it and you're like, oh, are they going to cause an incident just out of like that tension and that suspense? The guy looking through the scope, looking at people, looking at everything. It's like you having to watch him make that decision of like, is this someone scoping us out or is this someone just looking?
Mm-hmm.
But I really liked how it portrayed that sort of, it's a lot of sit around and wait type deals, which allows you to really, you kind of see in those moments how these, people in the military form that strong brotherhood. Um, but I think to me the pros of the movie, I thought the direction was really great. I love the big sort of sweeping scenes. Everything was very clear. Everything was well framed. Everything was well shot. I knew where people were when action was happening. It did a great job of like showcasing the house, so you sort of know where things are happening in the room and on the roof and everything in that regard. I thought it was a masterclass in tension building. I was gripping up until that inciting incident where the shit hits the fan. You are gripping your seat waiting for that. The 20 minutes of the guy looking at the scope, I was on edge because I'm like, what's gonna happen? You know? And I thought the sound design was phenomenal personally.
I'm so glad you brought that up. Sorry to just to jump in because
No, you're good.
as soon as I threw it over to you, I was like, man, I didn't talk about the sound. Alex Garland movies always have great sound. And I've been
Mhm.
very vocal on this channel about how I thought that Civil War should have gotten a Best Sound nomination at the Oscars.
Yeah.
The sound in this movie is incredible. Okay, sorry. Back
No,
to you.
yeah, no, definitely. I thought that was the most immersive side of it. Like the sound design is really what brought me, I feel like, more into the movie. I thought the performances on a whole were very good. I really love Will Poulter. I love his range. We saw Death of a Unicorn. We spoke highly of his comedic abilities in this. But the sort of range he shows, it was a very subtle performance in a way in this. He's a character that has some trauma with it that you sort of unravel throughout the film, and I thought the way that he portrayed that was very well done. Joseph Quinn, I always enjoy watching. I thought Michael Gandolfini did a very good job. I really liked him in the
Yes.
movie. I also really like him on Daredevil Born Again. I think we've talked about him a lot on it, and I agree. Charles Melton did come in and he did sort of command the stream. But what I really liked about the movie too was I feel like it's very easy for a war movie to slip into this sort of like gun toting, guns blazing, American propaganda, go kill the terrorist type thing. And I thought that this had a really real aspect to it, where they are just trying to get, they're concerned about themselves and everything there. But I would say the Charles Melton team that comes in is when you sort of get this false machismo bravado sort of coming in, and that's really where you get that sort of, there's a character that comes in on Charles Melton's team that's very
Mm.
much like, we're gonna shoot him, haha, and he's like knocking people that are like, no, we have people like bleeding out and dying, like you can't be doing this right now. So I thought the way it sort of handled that all was very well as well, because I do feel like a lot of war movies tend to slip into that zone quite a bit.
Yeah, and I also like that they didn't outright ignore it. They just showed that like, hey, time and a place, does it look like this is the time or the place like for that? And it showed even people on his own squad when he would do that, just be looking at him with that look of like, what are you doing? Like, no,
Yeah.
like we, and like, and also like the movie also, for as serious as it was and as intense as it was, it didn't shy away from like some dark humor as well. I won't spoil who, but there are two characters who get critically wounded in the movie, and their performances, they're killing it. They're in pain. You can tell like it's literally life or death, and like their injuries are to their lower half, like to their legs. And there's several times in the movie through the chaos where someone comes in, especially someone on the opposite team, and like bumps into their leg, and they just have a moment of like God, like when they hit their leg, and then it's people just being like fucking watch the legs, and like
Yeah.
and like especially with Ray Mendoza working on the movie, like that was probably like this has to be in there because it's a small detail that I feel like would have been missed by a filmmaker who hasn't experienced something like that, is keeping that kind of very human moment in of something like that happening, which I also
That's what I feel like
appreciated.
too about the opening of the movie. I thought was very effective in just like establishing the camaraderie of that team.
Hmm.
So like I thought it was a great way to just in 2 minutes to show me the vibe of these guys, their connection, their brotherhood, and how that plays in, and then immediately cutting to what that looks like. And it really does show sort of like you said, the sit around and wait, like
Hmm.
they're all having this good time and then the shit gets going and they're like, all right, time to like buckle down and do this.
Yeah, no, for sure,
Mhm.
for sure. But guys, the important question is, what did you think of Warfare? Did you get a chance to see it? Please let us know down in the comments below what you think. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next review.